B'ezrat Hashem, this year we're going to, B'ezrat Hashem, through the Koach HaTorah, there's two people over here that we need a big refuah shleima. One is Chanan Shimon ben Eleanor and Chaim Yisrael ben Chana Tziril. Hashem should send them a quick refuah shleima. And Lilu Nishmat Dvora Tova Bat Tzvi Hersh. Hashem should Yishav Aliyas Nishama, and the other two, B'ezrat Hashem, they should have a complete refuah shleima. B'ezrat Hashem. To be makdam before we start the shiur, when I was in Uman this past year, I was staying in a room with a few friends of mine and a few people I didn't know. Out of nowhere, I decided, let's do a tikkun klali together in the room. You know, why not? So, all of a sudden I took a tikkun klali, everybody took a tikkun klali, and I started saying, Reini Mekasha, that's me. So one kid, I saw that he gave like a face or a look. So I asked him, what do you mean you have an issue saying Reini Mekasha, that's me, to the tzaddik? Like, what are you doing in Uman then? You know, like, that's what Uman is, to be Mekasha to the tzaddik. He says, my Rebbe says Avodah Zarah or something, and he just like brushed me off. So I knew that, listen, you know, no matter how much wisdom I bring from Kabbalah and chassidut, everything, there's, you're not going to, the kid was stuck in his own, you know, the kid doesn't have a clue of what it means to be Mekasha to the tzaddik. So the point of this year, I thought about is because it's a big problem. A lot of people have this thing that Breslov are bringing, I don't mean to say the whole Jesus thing, God forbid, and they're making Rav Nachman into a god, you hear that around. I'd like to set the facts straight that it's very far from that. And not just very far from that, it's needed. It's needed that we have to attach ourselves. Now, true tzaddikim, they attach themselves when they wash their hands until Sedayim. They go, Reini Mekasha, that's me, and they attach themselves to So we're weaker, at least I am. I don't know what you guys are holding, but I'm weaker. So I try as much as I remember before I do a mitzvah to attach myself. We're going to explain the reasons and everything why. And show the makairis of these things, of why to be makasher ourselves to the tzaddik. First Torah that I'm going to bring is Torah Tzaddik Aleph in Chilik Beis. Rav Nachman says like this, Da. And we always know that when Rav Nachman says Da, there's a Messiah and Anash from the tzaddikim in Breslov that's probably brought from Rav Nosson, that when Rav Nachman says Da, he's bringing this Torah from the highest of worlds called Atzilus, which means it's a tremendous, tremendous deep idea, even though it seems simple. But we're gonna just bring the simple things just to explain just the reason why we do this in Breslov. And in chassidus also, don't think not. In chassidus also, many chassidus, they have this thing to attach yourself to the tzaddik. Is it on the level of Breslov? No. In Breslov, they're very, you hear of Berlin give a shiur, 10 minutes of the shiur. In the beginning, it's just, I need Mekasher, I need to this, and that tzaddik. And finally, by the time the shiur starts, your mind's going like crazy because it has like 20 different names, it's all coming and going. But let's start. Da, ki iskashus be'emes tzaddikim amitim, to attach yourself to each Jew, and even a non-Jew who wants to become close to Rabbeinu Shalom, he has to attach himself to the tzaddik amiti. Why? Because hu to'eles gadol, it's a great, great help, it's a great need. Mo'id mo'id ki alidei zeh, through one attaching himself to the heilige tzaddikim amitim. Rav Nachman has a famous Torah in Chilik Beis, the first, that there's a lot of tzaddikim, quote unquote, that they're full of sheker, like we see nowadays every day in the news, another tzaddik is getting called for this and getting called for that. And we have to make, Rav Nachman says, Rav Nosson says, how does somebody have to attach himself to the tzaddik amiti? Rav Nosson says, only through tefillah. Tefillah, to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to be magic you, to lead you to the tzaddik amiti. Why to lead yourself to the tzaddik amiti? Because the Ta'el is godol ma'od ma'od ki alidei zeh zeichen l'tshuva shlema. Person, what's the point of a person? His whole life he has to always do tshuva, right? Rav Nachman says in Torah Vov, Chilek Aleph, that a person always do tshuva on a tshuva. Why tshuva on a tshuva? Because no matter, as you go higher, your tshuva, you realize, was a weaker tshuva, because your hasaga of tshuva was a lower down hasaga. As you go higher and you get closer to Rebbeinu Shalom, you realize that you're lacking something else, and your tshuva was lacking, so you have to build it up. So it's really like building. It's like a house. There's levels. So Nachman says, but in order to even do tshuva on tshuva and get to tshuva, is only through attaching yourself to the true tzaddik. Somebody who goes through a lot of pain and suffering, why does that happen? Because he has yisurim. What is yisurim? The Gemara in Shabbos says, there's no yisurim without a sin. So how do you remove all the difficulties in life in the yisurim? Gemara says, the answer, right? Do tshuva. Rav Nachman says, how do you be mamtik the din through tshuva? But you can't do tshuva without the tzaddik. That's what the Rebbe says over here. Then the Rebbe says an interesting thing, which we're going to get back to because it's very deep, and that's going to be the end, more of the Kabbalistic aspect. What happened was when the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world, and he created the tzimtzum, in Kabbalah it says, which is, remember we spoke around the first story of the seforim Maisis, a Maisor of Nachman says there that the Rebbeinu Shalom had a broigis. And we said, what's the broigis? He says he got angry at his daughter, the king. So we said the king is Hashem, and he got angry at what? The daughter. What's the daughter? The daughter is the Shechina. What do you mean he got angry at the Shechina? Rav Nachman doesn't say why. So we explained based on the Arizal, and explained based on the Kisvei Ari, and all from the seforim of Kabbalah. When the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world, he created a tzimtzum. That means he hid his iris, he hid his light. What happened was, what's the Shechina? The Shechina was part of Hashem. The Shechina now is the shiur of Nishmas Yisrael, which is what? What's the shiur? What connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Our inner Amunah. So the Shechina that's down in this world is the inner Amunah that's inside of us. Amunah Pnimit. That's what the Kabbalah say. And that's the Pshat in Rav Nachman's story. When a person attaches himself to the tzaddikim, what do? They bring the person back to his Amunah. What do you mean he does brings back to Amunah? He brings back the Shechina and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu as one. Because really the Shechina is Am Yisrael, the Amunah that's inside of them, and the Rebbeinu Shalom. But how does a person do that? Only through the tzaddikim. Why? Because the tzaddikim, mamash teach Amunah Pshuta, Amunah Pnimit, brings it out. That so far is one thing that the Rebbe says about attaching themselves to a tzaddik. The Maisel, the Rebbe says something even more important, not more important. The Rebbe says a bunch of things about tzaddikim. I'm just showing you all over the Sifrei of Rabbeinu. Rabbeinu himself says that we have to mikash himself to tzaddik. People think that we made it up today, that what, or Berland, or Arush. These people are full of sheker, chas v'shalom. It's found in Likutey Moharan everywhere. I'm just bringing the Makairis, and then we're going to explain the depth of why, mamish, why the Shechina, all these things. Now, in Torah Beis, Chelik Aleph, Sivkot and Vov, the Rebbe says like this: V'tzarach kol echad lechavim b'tfilosoi, sheikasher atzmi letzadikim shabador. Again, Rav Nachman says that every time you daven, you should attach your davening, your tefillah, to the tzadikim of the door, which is what we say already in Mikasher Tatzmi. Ki kol tzadik shabador b'chenes Moshe Mashiach. We know that L'maisa, what's the Neshama Mashiach? In chassidut, they say, especially in Breslov now, in Chabad they say this, but in Breslov we know that there was one soul, that's a soul that's tzaddik amiti, which is the bechina, the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the soul then went to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, then it went to Arizal, Baal Shem Tov, and Rav Nachman, and then Rav Nachman said there's not going to be a chiddush until Mashiach comes, because there's not going to be any tzaddik that's going to have that part of the soul until Mashiach comes. The Maiso, a person has to attach himself to the tzaddik of that generation is the bechina of Mashiach, which is the bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the tzaddik amiti of each generation. Today we say, who's the tzaddik amiti? Rav Nachman until Mashiach comes. The Gemara says, there's plenty of places in the Gemara, but the Maiso, like this, that the Gemara says, in Shabbos Kuf Aleph Amud Beis, the Gemara says that one Tana used to call the other Tana Moshe. His name was Rav. Somebody can tell you. It's a little. If somebody, they used to call Rav Shmuel Moshe. The Gemara asked a kasha, Moshe. So Pshat is they used to call this Tana Moshe because he was a b'china of Moshe Rabbeinu, the b'china of Torah. Not that he was Moshe Rabbeinu. What's the Pshat? Because each tzaddik in each generation has a b'china of Moshe Rabbeinu of what? Of this Indian of attaching himself to that neshama, to the tzaddik ador. That what? That he could bring the tefillah up to. Rav Avram brings Chut Shel Chesed Moshe b'chol dor v'dor. Very nice. B'diuk. That each tzaddik has a b'china of Moshe Rabbeinu. And we said in the times of Baal Shem Tov, attach himself to Baal Shem Tov, but right now we have the Rebbe, Rav Nachman. Like this. Then Rav Nachman continues and he says a little more. Moshe Mashiach. It says that what? Until Shiloi. Do you know who Shiloi was? Shiloi is Mashiach, right? What's the gematria of Shiloi? The Baal Turim says in that pasuk, I saw Baal Turim says Shiloi is exactly equal to Moshe Rabbeinu, which is 358. Moshe Rabbeinu is the bechina of Shiloi, and what Shiloi? Shiloi is going on Mashiach. You see that Mashiach is the bechina of Moshe Rabbeinu. What does that mean? That neshama. That what? The neshama of the tzaddik amiti, which is the same neshama. V'chol tefillah shekol echad mispal, and every tefillah that a person davens, the bechina is ever ma'ashchino. The shechina is built shem every amishkon. The shechina is built in a way like we know that really in Kabbalah and everything, each world, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the tzimtzum and the chol hapanui, and the Rebbeinu Shalom created all the kelim, it was all created in the form of a human being. I could spend hours talking about this, but I will just give you a little bit of in the first chelik of Eitz Chaim and Eitz Chaim in the Rizal explains how the Rebbe Hashem created the world. And this is it's called the spheres, the shtalshus of the spheres. What happened was when he created the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created that there was iris in the form of circles, but also there was one line, a kav, that came down. Kav HaYashar was called. And the Kav HaYashar is what we are about, because the Kav HaYashar is where the world of Bechira is, and that is the form of what? 3 lines. What do you mean 3 lines? One line, the right, is the Bechira of the right hand, the left hand is the other line, and the straight is the body. And each thing has its point. There's the noses over there. In Kabbalah, they call it a nose. It's all means utensils for holy sparks and iris to come down. That gives life to this world. Because without this, then there would be no world. We see that everything is really like an aver. And if you look, by the way, what's interesting is, each mitzvah, the Sefer Haredim says, one of the Rishonim, he says that each mitzvah is connected one of the avarim. That means you see that, everything in the Ishtalshalos, why there's 365 mitzvahs, 248 is connected the body, the limbs, because the body, the limbs is the avarim. But connected the physical avarim, there's also spiritual avarim. So the world is created from those spiritual avarim. So what's the Rebbe saying? The Rebbe is really hinting to that. That's why I'm saying this, because he says really every single tefillah is connected one of the avarim of the Shechina, because every tefillah is also connected a certain part of what? Of one of the limbs of the body. But who's able to build a Mishkan? But he says, the mice is, if you build a person, right? If you put the hand on top of the head, and then it's not going to be a person. The hand has to be here, the leg has to be here. The same thing with the Mishkan. If you're building the Mishkan, which is the Avarim, through Tefillas, then you have to know where the Tefillah goes. Dr. Rebbe, only the Tzaddik Amiti knows that. So when I daven, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to what? Build a Mishkan, which is the Bechina of the Shechina, which is this kashus of the Shechina, which is what we said from Tzaddik Beis, Achilik Beis. But only the Tzaddik knows how to build the Shechina Lefiyah Tefillas. So I have to attach myself to the tzaddik, Dr. Rabbeinu. That's what Nachman says. And we see from the pasuk, the Mamish, what does it say in the pasuk in Shmois Lametes? Vayiviu es hamishkan el Moshe. It said they brought the Mishkan to Moshe. They brought the Mishkan to Moshe. What do you mean? They brought the boards to Moshe? Moshe couldn't build the whole Mishkan. It means that they brought the tefillas that they built the Mishkan to Moshe. Through Moshe was able to sort out their tefillas and build the Mishkan. So over here again, we see the importance of accepting that we're not that holy, we're not that great, and we have to, bring it up a notch to the tzaddik. Another reason is, by the way, what I remember when I was learning is Lamais, we know that what? A person who has Averis, the tefillah that goes up, the kitrugim, they're able to grab the tefillah. What happens? There's a famous question, Lamaiso. The question is like this. How does a ger, somebody's a convert, there's many converts out there, Baruch Hashem, how do they all of a sudden want to become a Jew? So there's a bunch of terutzim, a bunch of answers, and there's a lot of loveness, a lot of chassidus in it. But one of the answers is, Or HaChaim explains in Parshas Kitzitze. Rabbeinu Or HaChaim, Or HaGadol explains that really, when the Rebbe Hashem created all the neshamas, there were certain neshamas that after other Mishin did the chet, and there was a burst, and all the neshamas from tzitzis fell out, the Yetzer Hara, the Sitra Achra, swallowed a couple of them. More than a couple. But we want to make it like a little bit, but many. And what happened was, they got caught inside. And how do they get out? Right? So it says that the tzaddik is able to get them out. The tzaddik is able to get these neshamas out of the Sitra Achra, that the Sitra Achra swallowed them. You see that what? That the Yitzhar has an Indian, he has a koyach, the klipa has a koyach to swallow the tefillas and the kedusha. Like we said, that's where they get their yanika from. Where the klip has nothing from itself. It's what it gets from the kedusha, a little bit. So what happens is, how do we make sure that the klipa doesn't grab it? To the tzaddik, just like the tzaddik has a way that he can pull it out, the tzaddik has a way that he's able, that the klippa can't touch him because he's so holy, and he brings the tefillah up. Who in this room? I know me. I'm not. I do averis. I'm afraid that my tefillah will not be accepted, and we all need tefillahs. So I attach it to somebody like Rav Nachman, who was bottom to Rabbeinu Shalom, and he had no averis, and he's able to bring up the tefillah. So that's another reason why be'etzim to mekasher the tzaddik. The ma'isa like this. The Rebbe says in Chelik Aleph in Torah Tes like this. Sivkotim Dalit. The Rebbe says like this. Why? Another reason. The Rebbe is we're just saying all the reasons, and then we'll explain a little more deeper. But והצדיק יודע לכוון השעורים להליס כל תפילו ותפילו לשער השייך. כי כל צוות צדיק מבחינת מוישה משיח, כמו שאמר משה שפר כמר תקציב עד כי וישילו ידום מוישה, ומשיח הוא כל התפילס, בשביל זה יהיה משיח מרב הדוין, כי התפילס הם מבחינת חויתם, like this. The Maisa, we know that, first of all, Rav Nachman says this in many places, and in all chassidus and Kabbalah, that when the Yam Suf split, it's split into 12 ways. The Chassam Sofer talks about this also in Shas V'Tshuvas. Chassam Sofer, that when it's split in 12 ways, it meant that each one had his nusach tefillah. That's why today people say you don't daven this way, you don't daven that way. But in the beginning it was like that already. They all daven. So Taimani says him, and this Ashkenaz said, they had 12 ways, so it's all good today. Today maybe you have 50 ways, but it's okay. You see such a thing that... But the point is over there, that it meant that each shevet had his channel and his gate up in Shamayim, the spiritual shar. The problem is, person doesn't know what shevet he's in. Person doesn't know anything. The tzaddik is able to what? To channel the tefillah that we're not able to do to the right shar that tefillah belongs to, and that person belongs to that gate. Why is he able to? Because we know that tzaddik amiti be'etzim, we said is b'chin of Moshe Rabbeinu. What's b'chin of Moshe Rabbeinu? The tzaddik amiti. The Rebbe says in Torah Beis, and it's all over. We spoke about it once. The Arizal talks about it. The Mashiach is really. I one time said a joke. It's not such a joke. People today have this, it's a psychological thing that they think they're Mashiach. People get this thing they're Mashiach. So I one time saw that the Arizal says that really, because Mashiach we are a bechin of Mashiach. We're all included in the Neshama Mashiach. There is one Mashiach. So maybe they feel that it's so close to Mashiach, so they get the syndrome that they're Mashiach. But they're not. But the point is, there is one Mashiach, but the Mashiach is kol all the Neshamas. Because Mashiach is kol all the Neshamas, he knows all the Neshamas, because it's him. So Mamelo, who's the Mashiach? Each tzaddik the tzaddik amiti is the bechin of Mashiach also. What does that mean? That means that only a tzaddik is able to bring it up, all the tefillahs, because he knows where each tefillah belongs, because it's part of him. We can't do that. And what's interesting is that we said that that's why we said that by the teva, the oiriv, right? We said, why is it called the oiriv? We said that when the oiriv left the teva, kept on coming back. So we said, why? Because he didn't want to, no matter what. He wasn't miyayish. He kept on telling Noach, I want to come back in. Noach kept on throwing out, he came back in. Zok to Zara Kadosh, who's the oiriv? Davra Melech. Why? Rabban Hashem kept on throwing Davra Melech back and forth, back and forth. We said this a couple of weeks ago in the seforim. What's the pshat? Oiriv is Davra Melech? Because also, he kept on getting thrown away. Look at his life. He kept on coming back saying, Hashem, I don't care what, I want you. What happened? Who's Davra Melech? Davra Melech is Dav Mashiach. What's Mashiach? Mashiach is called the Oiriv. Why, David? Because we just said, because Oiriv is a bechina of mixed. Mashiach is a mixture of all the neshamas of Am Yisrael. That's why we tied it into the seforim of the Indian of David HaMelech going through ups and downs is because, and we tied it in, the why today people going through so much, because we're bechin of Mashiach, and Mashiach has to go into the lowest of places in order to get all the souls. We also have to, because we have that job. We have a job connected to Mashiach, so we also have that problem. Now, Amai says like this, I'm going to bring another Torah, Chelik Aleph Torah, Reish Yud Beis. Rebbe says, so far we have four things. We just said why you have to touch yourself to the tzaddikim. I'm going to continue a little more, and then I'm going to get into it a little more. But like this, Dr. Rebbe in Torah Reish Yud Beis, the Rebbe says that koyach hadibur ba'idei is kashas tzaddikim. One sentence. What does it mean koyach hadibur? The Rebbe says any dibur through tefillah, through davening, or through Torah, it is only because there's a tzaddik. That means you know that you have nothing from yourself. It's only through these kashas tzaddikim that you have the koyach to speak and learn Torah and to daven. So the Rebbe says. Another reason is the Rebbe brings. Lamaisel, like this. This is a famous Torah Dalid in Chelik Aleph. The Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe brings also over there, you have to attach yourself to the tzaddik. Now the Rebbe says, how do you attach yourself to the tzaddik? There's three ways, the Rebbe says. What does it mean to being attached? The Rebbe says, Ha'bechina harishoino. This is in Sifkatum Ches, in Torah Dalid, Chelik Aleph. Ha'bechina harishoino k'shroitz tzaddik. One way is to look at the tzaddik, to see the tzaddik. I one time saw the Chidush Sharim says, the Baal Shem Tov brings, and many of the tzaddikim say, that just looking at the face of a tzaddik, it gives you yiras shamayim. That's what the Rebbe is saying over here. To be mekash with the tzaddik is to looking at the tzaddik. The tzaddik has a certain aura on his face that if you look at the tzaddik in the aura, then it's able to go into you and to bring you yiras shamayim. Chidush Sharim says this, and it's brought down in a lot of sifrei chassidus. Then the Rebbe says another way. What's another way? Another way to attach yourself to the tzaddikim is not just looking at him. This is a higher level, meaning the Rebbe is saying a higher level is to give tzedakah. To give tzedakah to the tzaddik. So a lot of people, you always see after Rav Arush Hashem, everybody's running to give him tzedakah and pidyon and everything, because it's over here. The Rebbe says that the biggest tzedakah and the second highest way to get close to the tzaddik is through giving the tzedakah to the tzaddik. Then the Rebbe says a third way, which is even higher. This is the highest. הבחינה השלישית, כשמזווד וידוי דברו לפני תלמיד חכם. שהידי זה התלמיד חכם, מה זוכר בדרך יושר לפי שורש נשמתו. The tzaddik knows the shirish of all the neshamas. One time I heard, I don't know if this is true, one time I heard b'shem people that I heard from David Abu Chatzira, that he said b'shem Rav Shalom, that Rav Shalom has this koyach that his talmidim is able to know the tikkun to their shirish and the neshama. What does that mean? That means that a tzaddik has the koyach to bring it to the tikkun, to lefi your shirish. Everybody has different shirish, right? What do you mean by shirish? What happens is, in Kabbalah, what's the neshamas? The neshamas is like a tree. Just like a tree, everything has one shirish, but it branches out. There's branches and then there's leaves. Each person has his way to get back to the source. The tzaddik knows his maslul, his track, which way, through this branch or that branch. So the tzaddik is able to, why he has to do a video in front of a tzaddik, so that we're not going to get into Rav Nachman as a whole Torah. What's interesting is, that's why on Erev Rosh Hashanah, what do we all do in Oman? One of the biggest things we do is, what? We talk and tell Rav Nachman what our averos are, no matter how embarrassing it is. So people ask, what do you mean, why don't you just speak to Hashem? This is the point. Because a tzaddik is able to bring your tshuva to the right branch to go all the way to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, Lamaisa is, we have a famous, there's a seforim in Parsha Shoftim, a famous seforim in Parsha Shoftim. The seforim says, that what does it mean to be mekashet to a tzaddik? That if the tzaddik tells you a famous thing, if the tzaddik tells you, but nobody knows the makar is seforim in shoftim. That seforim says that if a tzaddik tells you left is right and right is left, you listen to him. Right? It's a famous thing that if a tzaddik tells you to go left, and he points you to the right way, but you just told me left, he says, no, that's left, you listen to him. It makes zero sense. And a lot of people, unfortunately, I have my experience of people always trying to twist the tzaddik's words into what they want, and that's wrong, because that's not bechina of what the seforim is saying, and that's just going to the tzaddik can make yourself feel a little less anxious, but twisting into your own words, and that's wrong. The seforim is saying pshitus, tmimus. The Rav says this, you do this. It makes zero sense. Doesn't matter. There's plenty of stories that you read that the Baal Shem Tov said do this and do that, and people are like, what shayches, and then end up, that was their craziest of ways, and it came out. The point is the tzaddik knows everything, if it's the tzaddik amiti. Maiso, the Rebbe says in Kuf Chaf Gimel something very important though. He says, we said the importance of attaching yourself to the tzaddik. We just brought all the reasons. Then we said the ways are through tzedakah. The first bechina is to see the tzaddik. The second level is to give tzedakah. And the third way is to do tshuva, speak to the tzaddik and be vidu dvarim. I did this, I did that. The Rebbe says though, there's one thing that's very important that you cannot forget. And it is a very, very, very significant thing. Zok the Heliger Rebbe in Kuf Chaf Gimel. The Rebbe says, the main thing, and that's what the foundation of attaching yourself to the tzaddik is what? He brings it down. The Rebbe brings down what we just said, that from the seforim, that it's very important to just go with pshitas, whatever the tzaddik says to you, it makes no sense, you listen to him. Then the Rebbe says, you could really say that it's really a t'nai. You want to go in that way, you first have to throw all your wisdom out. What makes a person start figuring out what the tzaddik says and start talking to his friends and asking other people instead of, because a person has his own knowledge, right? He thinks he does. Rav Nachman says that is the biggest culprit. That's what destroys the kesher with the tzaddik. Because that's when you start making cheshbonis, and that's when you start saying, but really did he mean that? That's not a real connection with the tzaddik. Real connection with the tzaddik is, you listen to whatever he says, no matter how crazy and fanatic it sounds. If it's a tzaddik amiti, we're talking about the tzaddik amiti, but we said it's also through tefillah. One of the reasons why Rav Nosson was the biggest student of Rav Nachman, if you look in the Sifrei Likutey Moharan, he always talks about is, Rav Nosson, before he came to Breslev, if you read the book, Through Fire and Water, and Yemei Rav Nosson, he was the biggest gaon in his father-in-law was a misnagid, he was against chassidus. His father-in-law was a rav over 80 towns. His father-in-law, he said, if he was in the times at a Tanoim, he would be a Chidush. That's what he said about his father-in-law. And his father-in-law asked him to take over his place. We're talking about Rav Nosson, who was 20-something years old, a little kid, and he had such knowledge in Torah. He came to Rav Nachman, and he said, the first thing he ever did was, spilled everything out. He said, I realized. First of all, he realized when he heard one Torah from Rav Nachman that he knows nothing compared to Rav Nachman. But also, he had that Timim Samshitas. He was so eager to search for the truth that he knew the only way is to throw everything out. And that's where Rav Nosson became Rav Nosson, because he binded himself to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was the Bechin of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rav Nosson was the Bechin of Yeshua. No matter what. What does it say about Yeshua? He didn't go right or left. It says in Yeshua, Sefer Yeshua, and he tells the Am Yisrael, just like me, don't go right or left. What Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever Moshe Rabbeinu says, you do that, no matter how much. It sounds crazy. This Rav Nosson did. I heard there's a Rav in Breslov, Rav Shalom Sabak, right? So he has very good, sometimes good geschmack things to say. He one time said, I heard him say in a shiur, he said something very interesting. He said, in the times of Rav Nosson, he has like a deep voice, it was difficult for him. He taka had seichel. But today nobody has seichel, so it's not that such a hard thing to throw out your seichel. Because everybody's a bunch of balchuvas, everybody's a bunch of idiots, nobody knows anything. The thing to do, just know that, just throw out whatever seichel you have. He said, in Rav Nosson's times, Rav Nosson taka had seichel. Compared to Rav Nachman, he didn't, but he did have seichel and he knew it was real. It says today, whoever fools himself, okay, so then whatever, they're fooling themselves. But if somebody has any sort of emes in them, they know that they're a bunch of idiots. He says they're a bunch of, what do we know? He says, chuck it out, be realistic, just go with the tzaddik. Go with the iskashus with the tzaddik, and go with the rebbe. Now, like this. The Maiso, Rav Nachman says in Chelik Aleph, today we're just going to go through many Torahs of Rav Nachman, just to bring out very clear. What's interesting is, not that I really care, but on one of the shiurim, one of the women commented, some woman, somebody told me they saw on Facebook, that she said that your shiurim are you're speaking too much about one point. She doesn't understand the point of the shiurim then. She missed the whole point of the shiur. What's the point of the whole shiur here? The point of the whole shiur is, of course, somebody could say, to be kashi to your tzaddik, goodbye. The point of it is to show how realistic it is. How realistic it is that it's found in all the seforim. A person, the more you see it, the more also you understand it, and the more you want it, because you see how serious it is that Rav Nachman brings this in 10 different Torahs. I could bring one Torah. That's not the point of the shiur here. The point of the shiur is that it's a tremendous, this terrible thing that people look at Breslov, oh, they attach themselves to the tzaddik. We're bringing every single Torah that we can to show, not like that. If the point of the shiur was just to say, Tekashi tzaddik, so you say, I would give a whole shmooze, and I wouldn't bring B'kairs, and it'll be beautiful, and bring all the Kabbalah, and that's not what the point of the shiurim is. The point of the shiurim isn't just to throw around Eitz Chaim and throw around Zayers. The point of the shiur is that we should take something from the shiur to our own hearts. That is, to understand that we have to mekash ourselves to the tzaddik. I could sit now and talk about this eitz and the roots and the shoroshim that's based on the whole Eitz Chaim. And everybody, genius. That's what we need in life, that people should call us a genius or call us this. That's not what we need. We need it in shiurim to understand, to take the eitzes. The Rebbe said my sefer is the highest and most difficult sefer in the world. But what do I want from you? Just to take out the eitzes to serve Hashem. That's all we want. That's all we need. What else do we need? We need to know this and that. Now, the Rebbe says in Torah Kuf Lamed Hey, in Chelik Aleph, the Rebbe says something very, very important. He says like this. He says, if the person is mekosher to the tzaddik, that's another reason. The Rebbe says all kedushas yamtiv and all the enjoyment they have from the chagim only comes from the iskashus to the tzaddikim. Ki tzaddik bechinas kedushas yamtiv kanal. Okay. What's the siman? Now somebody wants to say, I don't know if I'm attached to the tzaddik. So one way we know is if you listen and go straight or left. But another way is to understand what? How? If a person finally realizes and he feels that he's humble, that's because he was mavat himself. Because the sequence of the world is a smaller thing is mavat itself to the bigger thing. So if you realize that you're nothing, you're a little roach, kilu, to the tzaddik, whatever, then automatically you mavat yourself. So if you are mavat yourself, then you won't have gaiva. Because I'm going to have gaiva, look, he's much greater. That's the way to test yourself. Test yourself. You have to be true with yourself. But if you're not true with yourself, then the whole point of the shiur is not. There's no point of the shiur. The whole point is we're trying to find the emes. We're eager to get close to Hashem through the right way. Now the Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says, what's the kesher? How do you build the kesher through the tzaddik? So we said, seeing and all that, but the main way is like this. And everybody has this to a different level. And everybody knows this. Zok the Heilige Rebbe. Ve'ikra iskashas wa ahava is love. She ahavet tzaddik ahava shlemo. Kimo shekosu v'nafshek shur v'nafshe v'targume chaviv like nafshoy. Or kimo shekosu v'nefesh yonis nikshur v'nefesh David. What does that mean? V'ahavosa is tzaddik yiris v'hamsa noshim. The Rebbe says, how do you attach yourself really to the tzaddik? And this is where we're going to start digging a little bit. Is to what? To love the tzaddik. Through loving the tzaddik, you become one with the tzaddik. That is what it says by David and Yonasan. By David and Yonasan, there was such a friendship by them that they each were on. How do you come to real ahava? By the way, it's really connected through gaiva, because if you're an anov, so then you should really love the tzaddik. But if somebody has gaiva, you never come to loving another person because you love yourself only. But that's a given. We're talking about somebody who is bottom of vutal. Now, how that builds the ahava for the tzaddik, and through the ahava to the tzaddik, just like a man and a wife, they love each other, they become one soul. And they're one soul, but how do they build on it through the love? The love between the neshama of me and the neshama of the tzaddik becomes one. What's ahava? Ahava is 13. Which word is 13? Echad, one. Right? It says Hashem is going to be echad, right? Hashem echad u'shma echad. That means we're going to have true love for the Rabban Shalom in the next world. You can get it over here also. Echad. Echad is the beginning of the tzaddik and the neshama, that we become one through ahava. And Rav Nachman adds on, he says amazing. Rav Nachman says, even more you should love the tzaddik than you love women. That's what he says. That's a typical Rav Nachman thing. He says, love the tzaddik more than you love women. Hopefully it's a little more than women, but the point is, I always say, if a person reaches that he loves the tzaddik as much as he loves his wife, then he's in good shape. If he loves his wife, truthfully. The point is, you see over here that through ahava, the ahava builds this kesher between the neshama and the tzaddik. Now, the Medrash Rabbah says, it's a Zohar, and the Medrash Rabbah says that the Shechina Kedosha rests on the tzaddikim. Just like the Shechina rested on the Mishkan. What did it say about the Mishkan? Mishkan was a place. It was a vessel. The Mishkan wasn't, the physicality wasn't the thing, it was the spirituality. Behind the Mishkan, there was a vessel, a spiritual vessel for the Or of Hashem to come down, which is the Shechina Kedosha. What does it say in the pasuk? Really? V'shachanti b'soicha. What do all the Sefer Chassidut say? In yourself. Why does it say V'shchanti b'soichom? It says V'shchanti b'soichoi in the Mishkan. The tzaddikim say that you have to build the biggest Mishkan. Chazon Ish says also in the biggest Mishkan is inside your heart. Your heart is the biggest Mishkan. That's really where you build the Mishkan. Who builds a Mishkan in their heart? The tzaddik amiti. So therefore, that's a pshat what the Medrash Rabbah and the Zohar say, that where is the Shechina resting in the tzaddik? Because the tzaddik is a bechina of what? He's a kli. Why is he a kli? Because he built the Mishkan inside of him. And the Sifrei tzaddikim said that the Mishkan that's inside of you is even greater than the Mishkan that was the building. Ki'ilu. Because that's really what Rabban Shalom wants. Because the whole point of the Mishkan is to build a Mishkan in yourself. That's how goofy what it is. It's a stepping stone that each one of us should go and build a Mishkan inside ourselves. Now going to the Mishkan and serving the Rabban Shalom, doing Kabbalah, you build that. But if a tzaddik, he doesn't need a Mishkan. A tzaddik doesn't, because he's bottom to the Rabban Shalom to Orin Sof. He's bottom to the Orin Sof. The Rabban Shalom to caress in him. Why do we say the Rabban Shalom caressed in him? So we said from Rav Ashlag once that what is the Or of Hashem? Or of Hashem is something that wants to give. If a person is not somebody that's not bottom to the Rabban Shalom, then the Or is not going to go into him because it's all gaiva. So the Kli is a steer, it's a contradiction to the Or coming down. The Kli has to refine himself that he wants to have a Kli only because he wants to do back to bring to Rabban Shalom pleasure. He's using the Or to bring it back. That's only a tzaddik amiti. Again, tzaddik amiti, that's the big words in Breslov. Because the whole tanug of this world is the oiris of Hashem, but the oiris of Hashem cannot stay. Unfortunately, if the kli is not, the kli is broken. That's what happens by the shvir sakalim. Adam Rishon was a shvir in the kalim. He wasn't able to hold the or anymore after he did the avero. A tzaddik, when he becomes bottom votel, he, in his shirish by Adam Rishon, he right now completed his tikkun of fixing his kli. Rabban Shalom, his or that was supposed to come into him, is able to. And that's what Rav Ashlag means. That's the point of this world. Our whole world is that we have to refine ourselves. Like the Vilna Gaon says, why do we come down to this world? To fix all our midas rois. Because midas rois is really the shirish, the root to all midas rois. Midas rois, the Mesilas Shalom says, is gaivo. It's gaivo. Why? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you Pashut why. If a person didn't have gaivo, Ibn Ezra brings down a mashal. I think it's Pashas B'chukaisa. I don't remember. I heard this a long time ago. I saw it a long time ago. Ibn Ezra says like this. He says, it says in the Torah that a person shouldn't desire or be jealous of what his friend has. Ibn Ezra says, come on. Guy's driving a nice Ferrari. Guy's walking around the supermodel, whatever, all the shtuyot and everything. You look at it. What do you mean, don't be jealous? I'm not going to steal it, but I'm jealous. I want it. He says, why not? He says like this. He brings a mashal. He said one day, the king announced that he wants to marry his daughter off, princess. All of a sudden, people are running to the palace to have, to get to the princess and to show themselves off and what they can offer. Everybody's running. All of a sudden, you see this little farmer, this peasant, this like little hat in the field, and people asking, why are you not running? Why not running to the king's palace? So he turns to me, he says, you're the stupid ones. He says, I know my place in this world. I know my place that I don't belong with a princess, so I'm not going to waste my time. All you people are wasting your time because you think that you have. Where does it come from? Because you think that you're worth something. I'm okay with where I am. If a Yid understood that everything comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom, and he understands that whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom gives to him, that's where he's supposed to be, then there'll be no taivus, there'll be nothing. Whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom gives him, and he wouldn't sought after anything else, because this is what the problem is, the gaiva comes in because of the lack of emunah, but gaiva is the shirish of everything. Now, so Lamaisa, that's the pshat in the Zohar and the Medrash Rabbah. Why? Lamaisa, the Shechina rests in the tzaddik, because the tzaddik is a kli that can hold his ar. The tzaddik is the peasant. He knows, he's not no guy, but whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to give me, I'll be zeicher to and I'll give it out back to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Another thing, so we see that the koach of a tzaddik has a Shechina that's resting in him. It says also the famous thing, we know the Meiser Makova, right? The Yecheskel Shalom Meiser Makova. Who's the face of the Meiser Makova? Avos HaKadoshim. It's brought down in the Zohar. The Zohar brings down the Avos HaKadoshim. L'maiso, the shaila is like this. Why are they the Markova? Why are they the face of the Markova? The chariot of Hashem. It's something ruchani. So the pshat is like we just said. The Zohar says, what's the pshat? The Zohar says two reasons, but one of them is, we just said, because the Shechina rests in the tzaddik. The Shechina rests in the tzaddik. The tzaddik is the Bechina of the chariot of Hashem. Another thing he says is, that also once the Shechina goes into the tzaddik, because he was mvat himself 100% into the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Shechina never leaves him again. Never leaves him. A person can only be Meiser Markova if he's a fixture in the Meiser Markova. He can't go back and forth. The tzaddik was mvat himself 100%. From then on, he's mvat to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Somebody says, what do you mean? There's Yetzer Hara. No. There's certain tzaddikim that they abolished, the tzaddikim amitim, they abolished the complete Yetzer Hara. The complete Yetzer Hara, Mevatel Yetzer Hara, and the Tachlis and the Shorish of the Yetzer Hara. Why they stay in this world? Rav Nachman explains, because they had to help other people get to their tikkun. Point is, you see the godless of a tzaddik. You see the godless of a tzaddik. Now you know why that tzaddik is able to fix nature and all these things, because the Rebbeinu Shalom, he's bought and voted to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Not that he's God, not that he's, no, we're not doing a Jesus thing over here. We're saying that God rests in the tzaddik, not that tzaddik is God. What do you mean? A guy has a cup and water is inside the cup. The cup is the water? No, it's the kli. The tzaddik is the kli for Rebbeinu Shalom to rest in this world, so we can attach ourselves to the tzaddik. Now, like this. Now we're going to get, like we said before. Rav Nachman says before, and it's all in Sifrei Kabbalah, what is the job of every Jew in this world? Right? Why did Hashem create the world? He created the world that we should for pleasure. Hashem knew that the only way to create the world through pleasure is in a way that there's suffering in this world. Ramchal asked the question, he couldn't do it in a way where it was pure good. The answer is, Ramchal says, Lefi, the das, that we cannot understand, Rabbi Masik, the Rebbeinu Shalom knew that this is the best way. That through suffering we're building our Olam Haba. There's three things, I saw three reasons why the Rebbeinu Shalom made the world. Now one is, the Mesilas Yesharim says, to give us pleasure, Ziv HaShechina. We should sit and have dveikus with Rebbeinu Shalom, which is a pleasure we can't understand. The Zohar says, begin nishtamunden le, that Hashem says, I want you to recognize me, to makar me. The Tanya brings from the Tanchuma, and other Sifrei Kabbalah brings the Tanchuma that we should build a resting place for Rebbeinu Shalom in this world. When I was going through the Shitas, I realized it's one Shita, it's Pashit. The few what the Ramchal says, the Rebbeinu Shalom knew that this is the only way. What do you mean it's one? Why did Rebbeinu Shalom create the world? The tachlis of everything is pleasure. We should be davak in Hashem. How do we davak in Hashem? By recognizing Hashem. How do we recognize Hashem? Only if we build a dira, it's called an apartment, ki'ilu, a world down here. Why only down here? Because only in this world is there a capacity of finding Hashem in the darkness, which is the best way to be makar Hashem in order to get the schar. So it's really one pshat. The Zohar and the Tanya and the Mesilas Yesharim is really one, it's just the levels, but it's all one pshat. The Maisa is, so what's the job of a Yid really? The job of a Yid is to become one with the Shechina, to be dovak. The Tanug Amiti is to become one with the Shechina, Ziva Shechina. That's what Rav Nachman says. And all this seforim. I just showed really all the reasons is one pshat. It's just one is it brings is one is the shalav is the next level for the higher one. The Maiso, the Gemara asks Subis like this. The Gemara asks Akasho, how does somebody dovek in the Shechina? We know that the reason why the Rebbe created the world is to be dovek in the Shechina. And by the way, the whole Sipur in Maisis, the first Sipur, if you look in the shiurim that Baruch Hashem we gave over here, that we see over there, the shiurim was, the whole point of the job of the Jew is to find the emunah, because we said before, that what's the Shechina? The Shechina is the emunah pnimit, right? But that's, if you want, it's in the Sipur in Maisis shiurim, okay. The Maisis Gemara has a beautiful question. We're talking about always attach yourself to the Shechina. Reflecting more on Ksubis, how do you attach yourself to the Shechina? Zok the Gemara, attach yourself to the tzaddikim. Like we just said before, from the Zohar. Zok the Haflo, who is the Haflo? Haflo is one of the biggest achreinim. Zokta Haflo, like this. Why do I need to attach myself to the tzaddik in order to get to Shechina? He says every single Jew has a root in the Torah Kedosha, right? Like Rav Arush always says that if somebody talks bad about a Jew, then he passes the whole Sefer Torah. Because we know that each 600,000 neshamas, in Echanami today there's more than 600,000 people. Like the Arizal explains that each neshama, okay, it's difficult, but each neshama split into two, so really it's all from the same 600,000, but it kept on splitting and reproducing more and more. It's called mifatzel. Hashem, it's like taking a fire from one torch to another. The same torch stays, but you're able to light another fire. So it's really the shar of all the neshamas. This the Arizal says in Shar Gilgulim, but the point is in Sefer Pri Eitz Chaim. Now, the point is that every year has really the root in the Torah Kedosha. Really the fear, if a person was able to learn Torah Lishma 100%, then he would be able to be davak in Shechina 100%. Because where's the Shechina? Where's the Emunah? Where's Hashem? Where's it all found in the Torah Kedosha? But a person today is very difficult to learn Lishma. Because what does it mean learning for Lishma? Go look in the seforim Kedoshim. I don't have to tell you. It's literally you're learning for one simple reason. Because God commanded. No other reason. It's not easy. How many people could say that? Zokta Haflo. So because most people can't do that, there are people that can. Like tzaddikim. So when I'm learning Torah and I'm not Lishma, but I'll attach myself to the tzaddikim that are learning Lishma, and they're able to attach me to the Shechina. Because they're able to attach themselves to the Shechina because of their Torah that they learn Lishma. I can't, so I become one with the tzaddik. How do I become one with the tzaddik? Ahava, which is echad, like we said, which is 13. And then we said all the eights is how, giving tzedakah, being mevatel gaiva, and all these different things. Now, Lamaiso, this is a little more complicated, but I'll try to make it as simple as it is because there's a lot of background you have to know, which most people don't know the background. The Kabbalah say, we always mention there's 4 worlds, right? Abio, there's Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asir, right? And then there's a world on top, Kineg, which is called Ak, Adam Akadmoin. Adam Akadmoin is the channel that attaches the Or in Sof and brings down the Or into this world. Ak is really the Kav, is the line. What happened was, when the Rebbe Hashem, I have to give a little background, when the Rebbe Hashem created the world, he hid his light inside his light, and he created an empty space. The empty space, he knew why he made a circle, we said again, because we know that each point has to be equal. So nobody could say that, I was closer. And that's why we said this world had to be round, because everything is a chain reaction from the upper world. So if the upper worlds were round, so we know that our world is round. That's what Rashi knew 2,000 years ago, based on Kabbalah, based on the Ishtalshalos. Now, we kept on mentioning this because it's very important, but when the Rebbe Hashem created, but he knew that how did he bring the Or in Sof into the world? Because without the Or in Sof of Hashem, and it was vacated, nobody would be able to exist. He took a tiny little, called a kava yashar, a little line, which is a tzinor, which is a utensil, and he put exactly amount through that kav to flow into each of the 4 worlds, because that kav is really ak, Adam Akadman, to go into those 4 worlds. And he knew that this amount, if it was a little more, then everything would just go back to bottom voto because it would be too much, it would explode and go back to Or in Sof. But Hashem, through his hasaga and perfection, he knew exactly how much Or to go into the 4 worlds. Now, the top world is Ak, but nobody talks about it because we don't even know what it is. But Atzilus, people already start talking. We don't even know what it is either. But Atzilus is the Sharish and Neshamas that are tzaddikim amitim, which is like Moshe Rabbeinu and other Neshamas. What is Atzilus? Atzilus is already where the partsufim start. What do you mean partsufim? In Kabbalah, there is a saga called partsufim. Partsufim is the nose, the faces. What do I mean the faces? It means that the Rabban Shalom created, he condensed himself. The Or was condensed, right? It was aviyut. It became thicker in places, that it became a kli he made kalim. The Rabban Shalom made kalim. These worlds had kalim, like you would say, how do you have a water? You need a cup. We built kalim out of the tzimtzum of Hashem Mitzantzim's or. He built kalim, and those kalim were able to accept a certain amount of or. Like we said, enough exactly that it wouldn't become batal, and not less so that the world would be able to continue to exist. Now, Olam Atzilus, the kalim themselves, the utensil, is godliness itself. The godliness and the or that comes in are both elikus on different levels. The godliness it's a higher level of godliness that goes in. Zoktar Rizal in Shar, where did I wrote it down? I saw this. Hold on. In Shar Mem Dalid in Eitz Chaim, that only in Atzilus is the Kli and the Or from Elokus. But in Bia, which is Bria, Yitzira, and Asil, the Kalim are not. The Kalim are not Elokus. The Kalim are, they can hold a certain amount of Or, and that's why the difference between Atzilus and the next world is infinite, because Atzilus is so much higher because it has much more godliness. The next world has much less godliness, and the Kalim themselves are not godliness, but they could hold, Hashem built in a way, in a chokhmah, that it could hold the iris of godliness, but on a much lower level. The point is because if the kli is lower, then the or has to be lower. And that's how it goes lower and lower and lower and lower, and our world became an even physical kalim. How do we know? Like we see, there could be a wall. The wall really is just spirituality that's keeping it. But spirituality is so hidden because this world couldn't contain the light in a way that the upper world's going up, 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 up. Now, Lamaisa Pesach Eliyahu, this is from Eliyahu Novi. He wrote Pesach Eliyahu, which in Zohar they bring it. Pesach Eliyahu is a sefer on Kabbalah from Eliyahu Novi. It's very, very difficult, but he says this idea also, and Likutey Moharan brings it in Mem Dalet. Now, the point is, what's the point? The point is something beautiful. The Shechina Agdoisha, which is his or really, right? It says that Rabban Hashem sent the Shechina down through the worlds. That's the Oiris. What does that mean? It says like this, something beautiful. He says the Shechina can only rest completely in the world of Atzilus, because the Atzilus, the Kli, is completely godliness, so it can hold the Shechina, which is godliness. Right? The lower worlds can't hold the Shechina. What do they hold? They hold only it's called, in the Baal Tanya, it speaks about the system, it's a remnant. It's like, imagine somebody throws something on the wall, right? And the thing falls off, it leaves a little imprint. So it's not the thing itself, but it leaves an imprint. It's an imprint of the Shechina. What's the job of a Jew? He said, to be davak in the Rabban Shalom in the Shechina Kedosha. We just asked, how you davak? Through the tzaddikim. But now we're saying much deeper why. Not just because the Torah Lishma, because only the tzaddikim amitim, that the neshamas are rooted in the Olam Atzilus, they are the kli to hold the Shechina. Right? A person wants to get hold of the Shechina, he has to be Mikashet tzaddikim, that are the kelim, the utensils to hold the Shechina. The Shechina is from the Olam Atzilus. Atzilus is the tzaddikim amitim, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Arizal brings down different name. Moshe Rabbeinu, tzaddikim amitim, David HaMelech, tzaddikim, great tzaddikim. The point is, Lamaisa, now in the lower worlds, so I do have to say one thing that's very important. Again, even the tzaddikim, that they're able to mivatal themselves 100% to Rabban Hashem, to Or Ein Sof, they're not on the level of Atzilus, that they're kli like Atzilus. What I mean is, the tzaddikim are a little lower. They become, like we said before, a mishkan. What does that mean, a mishkan? We said Atzilus is all godliness. Why am I saying this? Not, God forbid, for one thing, that the tzaddik becomes godliness. The tzaddik is on a high level in the upper world that the Shechina can rest in him, because he has the proper kli. Water needs a proper kli, lamashal. A human being that's not a tzaddik, he has no kli to hold his or of the Shechina. Only a tzaddik that can get almost as close as Atzilus, he's the next thing after Elikos. What's the next thing after Elikos? The tzaddik amiti, right? That's why I always heard Rav Berlin said, Rav Berlin one time said, I was shocked, I didn't understand. He says, when you look at the tzaddik, you're looking at God. I'm like, okay, I mean, most people hear this, they'll probably like bug out. Like, for sure, the Litvish, they'll be like, Apikosim, start screaming. Achab, this is what he's saying. He's not saying that he's God. Of course not. The God is resting in him. So when you look at the tzaddik, you're looking at the kli. You're looking at the kli. You're looking at what's inside the kli. What's inside the kli is godliness. The godliness is not the tzaddik, but the tzaddik is so bottom that he's a kli. Now, what does that mean? That means that the Shechina can't come down lower than Atzilus, but it could come down a little lower to the Bechina of Mishkan, which is a little less. But we're not there either. So in order to get the Shechina, which is our whole job, to be davak ourselves in the Shechina, we need to do what? Attach ourselves to the tzaddik, which has the kli, the utensil, the fit utensil to hold this elikus, which is the Shechina. Shechina is elikus. Now, one last thing. We're going to bring from, there's something called the Sefer Mei Sharim. It's a big Kabbalah Sefer Mei Sharim, and he brings a lot of concepts I like, what you see in Pri Eitz Chaim from the Arizal. If Sefer Mei Sharim, he says a tremendous thing, which is famous. The whole Shar Kavan, the whole Eitz Chaim is built on this. Why it's called Eitz Chaim? Eitz. The Arizal explained that the whole world is built like a tree. What do I mean the tree? The souls. It means there was one soul. What happened was, there was a soul, and then it branched out, like we said, to many branches, many souls. And each person has his root. Each person's soul, each tzaddik amiti holds a certain amount of souls, all according to his place. Some can hold 1,000,000 souls, some can hold 1,000 souls. I don't know. Depends each tzaddik. That's not the point. Each tzaddik also, his soul could be from a different world. That means there are certain, like we said, tzaddikim that come from Atzilus, and there are certain worlds that come from Neshams come from all Abiyah, all the 4 worlds. In these 4 worlds that the tzaddikim have these neshamas, each yid has his root in this tzaddik. Which to this extent that the Arizal says something amazing. Arizal says the job of a Jew is only to help the tzaddik, because the tzaddik is a much higher up level. So all we're doing is helping the neshama of the tzaddik. That's what the Arizal says. Amazing. But really it's true, it makes sense, because you're helping the higher level. That's why you want to be dafuk in the tzaddik, because where does the tzaddik get his koyach from? From all the neshamas that he's included. He's included of 1,000 neshamas, so he gets koyach in the neshamas. I one time saw Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, one of the Litvisha, he brings in his sefer, he says, where does the tzaddik get his koyach from? From his students, from his kahal. Because they become bottom votal to him, because he's really the sherish neshama of them. It's like the Arizal says, and Mamela, he gets the koyachas. Now, so why do we want to sell, so what's the pshat? The pshat is like this. Like this. But he wants to say, the Sefer Mei Sharim, which is basically, it's from this word of the Arizal, pshat is like this. So when a person, each and all of us have our tzaddik that we feel close to. Many of us different. Why is that? This is what he says. Because each of us have a different root in our soul to that tzaddik. And one tzaddik may be in Bria, and if he's in Bria, then you're in Bria. If the other tzaddik is in Atzilus, that means the one who's attached to him is in Atzilus. Everything depends on each tzaddik. Why Hashem made it this way? It's not that Hashem picks favorites. Everything has its perfect tikkun, and we don't ask questions. Now, so really, this is why we want to be. Why do we have to be miskash to the tzaddik? Because the tzaddik is kailos. What happens? Every single thing in this world, the Arizal says a klal. Everything in this world wants to go back to its source. It's the way it is. So what are we? Our neshama, not our guf. A guf is like it says in Eov. The guf is just a flesh, just a covering. It's a vehicle. What does the neshama want to do? Which is us, really. We want to go back to our source. How do we get back to our source? Our original source is God. But we have to go up slowly. What's the next step? Tzaddik. Because tzaddik includes us. That means the tzaddik is higher, right? If $200 include $100, lahavdil. Tzaddik includes us. We want to go back to the tzaddik. Now somebody's going to say, but really, do you know... How many souls are there really? Anybody know? There's one soul. The soul of Adam Rishon. When Adam Rishon did the chait, all the other souls poured out. So he asked the question. The Mei Sharim says, "What do you mean? There's only one soul." And Eitz Chaim also says, he says it's like a tree, right? Everything is from one tree, but in the end, it all branches out, right? It's different branches. And also what's interesting is I saw one of the big Mukubalim writes that a tree itself also has 4 things. What's the 4 things? The tree itself, the branches, the leaves, and the fruit. It says the tree itself is Keneged Torah, meaning pshat, right? This pardes. He says that the branch is remez. He says that the leaves are drush, and the pri is the Kabbalah, is the soy that's inside. Just stam, talking about that, and that's Keneged the 4 worlds also, because we know that the 4 ways of learning Torah is Keneged the 4 worlds. Atzilus is Keneged Kabbalah. The next world that's underneath is Keneged drush, and the next world, the one above us is remez, and Elam Asiyah is pshat. Now, so what's the point? The point is, you see the importance of the tzaddik from all this. We have to attach ourselves to the tzaddik, because the tzaddik, and how do we become attached ourselves to the tzaddik? Through ahava. Ahava is echad, is one. And we start feeling that dveikus with the tzaddik, we'll start feeling dveikus with the Rebbeinu Shalom, because the tzaddik is koil, the ruchnius. What does that mean? He's koil. The Rebbeinu Shalom, the Shekhinah rests inside of him. Now, to finish off, like this. Rav Nachman says an interesting thing. He calls tzaddikim matchmakers, shatchanim. People, what do you mean shatchanim? This is the point. Because what does the tzaddik do? He's meshadich the souls of Am Yisrael to the Rebbeinu Shalom. What happens? What's a shidduch? Bringing two things together. What does the tzaddik do? The tzaddik is the middleman, right? That's the point. The tzaddik that is the whole point of Breslov. The tzaddik is the middleman to bring us to godliness. Not that he's godliness, but the godliness is in him, so memela he can bring it up. That's why he's called a shadchan. Because it's like he's being meshadich, a man and a woman. We do know that we are considered in the Torah calls us Am Yisrael the wife and Rebbeinu Shalom the chassan. That's why, the mahabba is going to be the marriage, right? We're going to become one with Hashem. Now, we're not going to become Hashem, we're going to become one with Hashem. Now, with all this, at the end of the day, we see something very simple. And Breslov Iskashis with the tzaddik is not anything to do with Jesus, God forbid. Jesus, what they call him? They said he's godliness himself. Not that godliness rests in him, that he in himself, like an atzilus, like the kli. He's a kli, but he also is godliness. God forbid. Yimach shemoy. That's our belief. Yimach shemoy and whatever. But what do we believe? What is our honest belief in the tzaddikim? Not that he's God. When we say that a tzaddik is godliness, that means that there's godliness that rests in him. Because Hashem goes into the tzaddik and rests in the tzaddik. And we should feel that. And everybody, one of us does feel that. Because when we're kasher the tzaddik, all of a sudden we have a drive to get close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Why is that? But I don't want to 2 minutes ago. All of a sudden, I know I'm very close. I'll be honest, I'm very close with a tremendous trend that's hitting tzaddik, Makobel. Every time I speak to him, I feel like that's it. I'm the next Baal Shem Tov. Like all of a sudden, Then the next day, that's not the same. Because you're makasher the tzaddik at that point to the strongest level. So you feel the Shekhinah the strongest. So you want to get closer. The more you go further away from the tzaddik, the less. So that's why in Uman, we should say Rini Makasher before the Tikkun HaKlali, and nobody should say Tzavod Zara, because that means you have no chachman chassidus and you have no chachman Kabbalah. That means you have no chachman at all. Bullshit. And not to be haughty, but it's like if you know what you're talking about, then say it. If you don't, then don't. It's the word, right? Somebody should say, if he doesn't know, I don't know. And listen to somebody that does know. We just brought from all of chassidus and Kabbalah the point. Attach yourselves to the tzaddik. Attach yourselves to the Rebbe of Nachman, right? The Rebbe. Everybody goes to Uman, you see them, we come back, all of a sudden their lives change. How? Because we're attaching ourselves to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik brings us higher to godliness. And that's it. It's forced on us. We want it. Sometimes we don't, but really we do want it. We should be zoicher to the emet, to be mekash ourselves to the true tzaddikim, and through that to really be mvatar gaiva and become true humble people. Hashem.